Live talks are a presentation and questions at the end. And to be honest, I'm a little nervous about the questions at the end, but I'd like to make this session a little more interactive since the audience is focused on students. And I really encourage you, as I'm asking questions, you can share your answers in the chat. So I'll be able to vocalize some of your thoughts and maybe what you already have to know about this topic of healthy lifestyles, and academic achievement. But just before we begin, let's make sure that we are concentrated, that we're focused. And I want you to take a look at this image and point out 5 differences. Because of COVID, we're not traveling as much, so I'm bringing you to the Eiffel Tower. Can you find 5 differences between these images? And you can type the differences in the chat. I see here some of you have found the birds. Some of them are missing. You've also seen a very, a very obvious one. The path is missing. Can you find any more? Yes, a few of the people are missing, and the cloud from the top of the tower is also not there. I think there's one more. Try to take a peek. There's missing people, I believe, in various spots. That's correct. Now, let's travel again, just so that we're concentrated, we're alert, and we're ready for the presentation. Let's go to Sydney. Can you find 6 differences in this scene? The boat is different. Yes, the stripes are different, the different colors. Once again, birds of sorts. The clouds are different in the sky. That's right. A boat is missing. That's correct. And some other nautical things. So hopefully this exercise got you alert and focused. And as a student, either you yourself or maybe you know a student, we have to focus and stay concentrated on different tasks. And our brain is behind all of this. So our topic today is how a healthy lifestyle may be linked with academic performance. So just off the top of your head, when you hear about this topic, which specific lifestyle habits do you think are associated with learning? Sleep? Thanks so much for sharing. You can always put your ideas in the chat box. Sleeping is important. Exercise are important. It's as if I don't even need to have this presentation. You already know what's behind the scenes. And you can see here, I've shared a few of the habits. We're gonna focus today on nutrition. We're gonna focus on physical activity. We're going to focus on screen usage. And we're gonna also focus on sleep today. And as we go through each of these habits, I would love to hear what you have to share. Maybe you specifically have some habits right now that can be helpful to other people who are in this presentation, who are here at the webinar today. So I want us to take this opportunity to sort of be a support group to one another. Some of you have maybe gone through school and want to share some thoughts. Some of you are in school and need to hear some specific tips. So go ahead and you can share those in the chat. And I hope you can engage with each other as a learning group together. I see some of you have also added staying away from mind-numbing substances and avoiding stimulants. Absolutely. So just getting into the first topic about nutrition and how that may impact academic performance, what habits do you think right now, before even hearing about it, which habits will improve your grades? Focused on diet and nutrition. Yes, drinking water. Our brain is made up of water, of course. And when you get those headaches, when you're not able to focus because of the painful headaches and migraines, number one step would be to drink water. I see some of you have also written eating well and exercising regularly. Yes, absolutely. Now, let's talk about the opposite. What habits do you think lower and decrease your grades? Someone wrote caffeine. We can see about that. That's a very hot topic. I was not able to cover it in this presentation, but science is definitely continuing to uncover more about the impact of caffeine on academic performance. So let's get into ways we can raise our GPA. There was a study done on students in, hang on, I gotta bring it up, students in Korea, aged 12 to 18. And this study uncovered that students who ate breakfast every day, that is 7 days a week, increased their GPA and had, um, they were at a higher risk of having a better academic achievement compared to students who never ate breakfast, 0 days a week. So, hopefully, some of you, now that we are at home, you have more time to prepare a breakfast and sit down and eat a breakfast before continuing with your studies or your work, as opposed to perhaps before the pandemic when you may have been rushed a little more to get to school on time. Another study done said that daily eating fruits and vegetables actually was found to increase your GPA by 0.15 points. Now, this may seem like, oh man, I might as well not even focus on that type of habit because it's not getting me anywhere. But if some of you are familiar with the GPA rating scale, the 4 point GPA scale, between different grade categories is about zero point 0.3 points in between each category. So 0.15, you're kind of working your way up the scale quite readily. And by regularly consuming fruits and vegetables, not only will you be able to find an alternative to perhaps some other foods that might be damaging, but you're able to increase your GPA by 0.15 points. Now, on the flip side, what may lower your GPA? So that same study, it showed that the consumption of soft drinks, which are very high in sugar, and also, if I should add here, even sugar sweetened beverages like 100% fruit juices. Although it may have the word fruit in it, they are highly different from the fruit itself, since the whole fruit would have fiber and would have other nutrients in it, whereas the fruit drink or those cocktails would completely be water and sugar. So be mindful of that when you're purchasing your fruit beverages. In fact, stay away from them. Instant noodles. This study again was done in Korea. So many students had access to instant noodles. And I'm sure the same for us here in North America. Instant noodles, high in sodium. Although it's easy and quick to prepare, there's not much nutrients in it. Fast food in general, lower GPA, I'm sure it's no surprise, as well as French fries in particular. There was an interesting note from a study done by Delines, and in his study, which is based on US college students, he found that students who just ate French fries 3 times per week, in fact, had a lower GPA, and most of them even skipped their final exams at the end of the term. So be careful of eating French fries 3 times a week. Maybe you can add in the chat, what's the best way to eat a potato? What do you think is the best way to eat a potato? Do you think French fries are the best way to eat a potato? Or potato chips? Or, hmm, I see some of you wrote mashed potatoes, cooked potatoes, hopefully. That's the best way to eat a potato. Air fried is a possibility, or just cut out potatoes completely, especially if it's a temptation to you. I can share one small story of when I was in university. I really liked French fries. It's a comfort food. You're surrounded by friends and the cafeteria serves them, so you can get them rather frequently. Now, I had another friend who we just decided to make a pact and just cut out French fries. And for that year of school, neither of us ate French fries, and we were able to focus better. And having that friend and having that social support really encouraged me to stick to that goal. And so, as we continue throughout our presentation and our webinar today, I encourage you find a friend in this webinar, or think of your neighbor or a classmate that you know. So you try to band together and encourage each other in developing healthy habits and eliminating unhealthy habits. And of course, confectionery and sweets, of course, lower GPA. We all know that these types of refined sugars cause a big spike in energy, in glucose in your blood, which stimulates the brain, absolutely. However, there is a big crash that will come shortly after. So we want to focus on foods that wouldn't have that spike in energy because of the dreaded lull after that energy has been released. Focusing specifically on micronutrients, there are specific foods that help the brain. I've listed a few here that focus on the development and the functioning of brains. And if we're looking at children, if we're looking at teenagers and adolescents who are students, full-time students, we want to make sure that by consuming a balanced diet, they're able to get these nutrients. So I've listed some here: folate, iron, and omega 3. Can you think of any specific foods that have these micronutrients? Maybe some of you need a little push, so I'll uncover the answers for you. Folate can be found in broccoli and Brussels sprouts, green leafy vegetables, green peas, which are so easy as a student. They're frozen, pop them on the stove, boil them in water, and you can get your folate and your protein, as well as chickpeas and kidney beans. These are great sources and natural sources of folate. Of course, most of you know that cereal is fortified with folate. Most cereal, though, is very high in sugar. So try to stick to the natural sources listed here. What about iron? Iron sources are beans, nuts, and even dried fruit. But of course, be careful of dried fruit because they may be highly concentrated with sugar since the fruit has been dried. Nonetheless, this is a great snack. I've seen many rock climbers and hikers take some dried fruit to give them the energy. So if you do need quick study break, maybe you're feeling a little low energy in the afternoon, picking up that dried fruit may help you zap to your studies again. And with omega 3, we can see that chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, and walnuts are great sources of omega 3. And the reason why omega 3 is important to consume is because our body cannot consume it, or our body cannot generate it itself. So we have to be consuming it from our diet. As well, we recognize that our brain, although it's rather small, just 2% of our body mass, but it takes up about 20% of the energy. So we need to fuel our brain with a lot of energy so it will continue to function. Whole grain carbohydrates are an amazing source of energy because they do not cause a large spike like we spoke about earlier, but in fact, they will have a general increase and release of energy. So, an example of whole grain carbohydrates would be brown rice and oatmeal, a staple for many students, very easy to prepare. And if you do need some tips, when I was in school, I would put my brown rice in a slow cooker and it would cook for 8 hours overnight on low so I could get my sleep while my brown rice was cooking. Or you do the same for beans. put your beans in the slow cooker on low for 8 hours and go to bed. It's a great way to get some of these habits done in, in a very easy way. Moving on to our next healthy lifestyle, physical activity. What habits do you think improve your grades based on exercise and moving? Why do you think it may do that? And what about the opposite? Not having physical activity. Will that lower your grades? We're going to take a look at what science has to say. And maybe you can comment in the chat, what is your favorite way to exercise, either in the summer or the winter? These ideas may help other people in the webinar to get some creative ideas and start to get passionate about different exercises. So for improving your GPA, of course, higher levels of physical activity are important. And there was a study done on US college students. And in this study, they found that simply meeting the recommendations for their age group, they were able to increase the GPA by 0.03 points. I know it seems small, but think about all of these combined together. Now, what are moderate intensity physical activities and what are vigorous intensity physical activities? Moderate intensity activities would be brisk walking and biking, and the types of activities where kind of work up a sweat, but you're not necessarily out of breath. You might be able to still talk to a friend while doing these activities. Now, when we talk about vigorous intensity activities, that would be when you're completely out of breath. So, jogging and cross country skiing. And I see some of you have written in the chat box mountain biking. Wow, and skipping. These sound like amazing activities. I see that lots of you are going out in the fresh air. And during the summer, that's a great way to get sunshine as well. Looking on the opposite side, what lowers GPA? Higher levels of obesity were found to be associated with a lower GPA. And of course, this can also be related to a sedentary lifestyle. And many students and workers who are now staying at home may have this challenge as we are sitting around, we're not really going outside of our houses much. So we need to be able to work on our physical activity. So I appreciate each of you for sharing your favorite exercises. Hopefully, we'll be able to engage in those on a daily basis. There was this interesting study done, and it focused on young children and their motor function. And it looked at those young children as they grew up into adolescence. So, for those of you who are parents of young children, it's interesting to note this particular study. The researchers asked parents simple questions like, can your child catch a ball? Or can your child skate? Or how is your child with writing and drawing? And these types of motor functions, if they were present in childhood and if they were developing in childhood, they were able to be connected with physical activity in adolescence. If children had compromised motor function, so they might not be able to catch a ball or they had difficulty with other motor functions in their childhood, it would predict that they would probably have lower levels of physical activity in their adolescence, or poor cardiorespiratory fitness, or higher levels of obesity. So we want to be able to train children when they're young with these healthy habits so that when they're older and when they're still students and when perhaps the pressures of school become more and more, greater and greater, they will have developed these habits that seem like a no-brainer. They will be able to continue living these healthy lifestyle habits because they were trained from a young age. And it was also noted that those who were more obese and who did not engage in physical activities decreased their GPA by 0.04 points. How does this work? What's behind the story? What's behind the theme and the connection between physical activity and academic achievement? Well, it's all based on academic self confidence. Being able to know that you can do something will help you to achieve those goals. By being physically active, that induces your brain to engagement and reduces boredom. We know children are active, they're moving around, that's how they learn, that's how they are wanting to engage with the world. And in doing so, this may increase their attention span and their concentration, which of course would be an excellent way and an excellent support for their schoolwork. On the molecular and the cellular level, we can see that by actively living, by exercising, your brain is able to perform neurogenesis, which is nerves being born or created. And the synaptic plasticity in your brain is also being molded. So you're able to modify pathways and you're able to really focus on specific pathways. For example, when we're learning a musical instrument, you're able to really support that pathway of how to play the notes properly. And by continuous repetition, you strengthen that pathway in your brain. And similarly, when you exercise, it will help your brain to be able to strengthen pathways when you're in school. So, when you're learning math or when you're learning an English class, by strengthening those connections in your brain, you'll be able to recall that information, as well as neurotransmitters, which are released from your brain and respond to a lot of your body functions. Of course, in some, your brain health and the structure and the function of your brain, by doing physical activity and exercising, you're able to support your memory and the executive functions of your brain, which are very important when it comes to school. Moving on now to a very hot topic, screen time. Now, this has completely skyrocketed since last year. Our screen time has increased dramatically. Now, we do recognize there's a difference. There's educational use and there's also recreational use. So, in the studies that I looked at, I normally focus on the recreational use for screen time. There's not much we can do about the educational use for screen time since many schools have gone online now, but lots of the research has been focused on recreational screen time and how it affects our learning. So, what habits do you presently have that are, connecting with your phone, your TV, different types of technology you engage in? What habits do you have right now that may improve your grade? And also, maybe you want to put in the comments what habits you have that might challenge and lower your grades. Does anyone have any bad habits? So, someone wrote, catching up on the news. Yes, when we read the news, we could read it on our phones. Now, it just depends how much time we're spending on it or what we're doing with that. Many people use their phones for social media, and many of individuals have Netflix or are watching movies on their phones and listening to music while studying. These are interesting topics, and some students find that this will help them. Some say that this is dangerous to do. So we'll take a look into a few of these topics. Looking at what lowers GPA, most of the recreational use of cell phones and technology have been shown to lower GPA. So there was a study done by, one moment, please, I need to get my notes. US college students, so very similar to Canadian college students, that had a distinction between high frequency cell phone users and lower frequency cell phone users. And they noticed that those who used their cell phone very frequently had less time for studying, less time for pursuing anything regarding school. They were less physically active, and of course, that means they are more sedentary. They found that these students actually were more multitaskers, or they kept switching between tasks and they were often distracted. And this may be a result of quite a few. You can see when we're using our phones, our attention span has decreased, and there was also more uncovered in another study that showed that even just 1 or more hour of TV per day led to poor homework completion and negative attitudes about school, as well as poor grades, and in the end, long term academic failure, perhaps, even just with 1 or more hour of TV. This is recreational TV per day. And of course, going on, 3 or more hours of TV per day would have an even greater risk to not only your academic achievement, but perhaps academic failure in the end. So hopefully, we're able to find an opportunity to kind of lift this burden. Many young people are really suffering from screen time use and being addicted to cell phones. I heard that perhaps some doctors are even diagnosing it as a legitimate addiction. So, ways that we can relieve this problem in society would just be coming together in a group, a social group, and making a pact to reduce or cut off. And having that support and motivation really helps individuals to work and focus on improving their habits, and thus they can improve their academic achievement as well. Moving on to sleep. What habits do you think improve your grades? You can think about bedtime routines. What bedtime routines would be helpful, and which routines would be unhelpful to lower your grades? I saw someone earlier wrote about blue light before bed and using screens before sleep. That may affect your sleep. Of course, that will probably lower your grades. There is a common phrase that if you go to bed before midnight, you get 2 hours worth more of sleep than if you go to bed after midnight. I know some of you have heard that probably since you were young as well. So, we're going to take a look into sleep and how many hours is needed. Of course, meeting the sleep recommendations will increase your GPA. And it was found in this study to increase the GPA by zero point 0.6 points. There was also in the study by Trockle, here on the page, you can take a look at it, that students who rose earlier in the day were able to have a higher GPA. So you can think about, oh, what might be the purpose? What might be the reasoning behind rising early? Well, perhaps they went to bed early, but of course, when you rise in the morning early, you'll be able to prepare breakfast, you'll be able to perhaps go exercise, and you have more time to engage in other healthy habits. So, all of them are kind of linked together, you've noticed throughout this presentation. Of course, what lowers GPA, the opposite, sleeping in. It may also lead to lots of procrastination. So, many students struggle with sleep. And hopefully, just recognizing the recommendations that are provided from various societies will be able to follow those. So, what do I mean by recommendations? Of course, Health Canada released the 2019 Canada's Food Guide, which is a very baseline recommendation, not only for adults, but also for children. You can see on the plate that they have created, half of it is full of fruits and vegetables. So, focusing on fruits and vegetables, as we learned earlier, will help your academic achievement improve. Of course, we do need that protein And you can see here in this category quite a few plant-based proteins like nuts and beans, tofu are great options for protein. You can also see a quarter of the plate for grains. And the ones that are chosen and selected and recommended are the whole grain pasta and breads, and of course, brown rice and quinoa, millet, things like that, as you can see. And one thing that is very striking about this recommendation is making water the drink of your choice. And I'm going to grab a drink of water right now. Perhaps you also need some. So these were the nutrition recommendations that, if met, students would have a higher likelihood that they have improved GPA and academic achievement. Looking at physical activity, this is provided by the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology. And this specific graphic is for children aged 5 to 17. Okay. So they built this 24-hour day based on physical activity. So sweating is the first section. That's 60 minutes. It does not necessarily mean it has to be the first section of your day, but this portion of your day has to be focused on that moderate to vigorous intensity physical activity. And children between 5 and 17 years old, it's required for them and it's recommended for them to have 60 minutes per day of moderate to vigorous intensity exercises, which would include playing games and running and doing things that would get them out of breath and getting them sweating. The next section is called STEP. This is just trying to incorporate more physical activity throughout the day, putting away their toys and going walking around the house and doing some errands with the parents, putting away laundry, things like this, by being able to move about and not just stay in one place. A child's day should have both structured and unstructured levels of physical activity planned and scheduled throughout their day. Here we can see a big portion, a big chunk is devoted to sleep. So for those children aged 5 to 13, they recommend 9 to 11 hours, and for the teenagers 14 to 17, 8 to 10 hours is recommended for that age group. And lastly, I did want to touch on this sitting portion. This sitting portion is a recommendation for recreational screen time, maximum of 2 hours of recreational screen time per day. And of course, as we saw earlier, even having 1 hour or more of recreational screen time per day had some pretty negative effects. So trying to limit this recreational screen time and sedentary behavior, switching it out for educational or more active behaviors and activities would be best for this age category. For those of you who are adults or even, I guess, university students 18 and above, of course, the recommendations for physical activity would be 150 minutes for an entire week, and then engaging in conditioning and muscle and bone strengthening exercises for at least 2 to 3 of those days per week. And of course, the sleep is a little different, 7 to 9 hours recommended. Now, as I've mentioned, all of these lifestyle behaviors are combined. So we can see that by having at least 3 healthy lifestyle factors, by adopting 3 of them, just at least 3, we saw in math there was a 3 to 9 times more likely to have a high performance in math for the students that were studied. And for the language subject, they were 3 to 6 times more likely to have high performance in language. And if they had adopted at least 3 healthy lifestyle habits, they were 4 to 9 times more likely to have a higher or high performance GPA. And this is all compared to those who had adopted less than one of the healthy lifestyle habits. So we can see that a combined effort is required. Now, as we are wrapping up, I wanted us to just take a peek. We have mentioned a little bit about math and language, but I want to hear what are your thoughts. If you were to kind of match up, nutrition has the biggest impact on um, one of these subjects, and physical activity has the biggest impact on the subject. What would you match together? Which healthy lifestyle habit would have the strongest impact on which school subject? Kind of like draw lines between the two columns. What do you think would have the strongest impact on improving your math mark? Maybe some of you are really struggling in your math or algebra classes. Do you know what would be the best habit to adopt? Let's see what your thoughts are in the comments. Screen time for math. There was a study done which showed that even engaging in educational things on the screen actually improved math marks. And we can see that quite a few technological jobs are focused on screens. So, software development and things like that, and being able to code, that would help even with your math marks. Now, in this study, they actually found that nutrition had the highest impact on English and French. So, changing your nutrition and adopting better eating and better diet had a large impact on languages, whereas physical activity had a larger impact on math. Pretty neat, right? So, some of you, if you're struggling in these subjects, maybe you want to focus on a specific lifestyle habit. So what do I do now? Where do I go from here? Right? I have all this knowledge. What can I do? So it's really important to start setting goals. You have this knowledge, you think about, oh, I need to start doing this, I need to stop doing this. And it was found that setting goals and having that social support raises your GPA, whereas being stressed and having anxiety, of course, will lower a GPA. So, as we wrap up our webinar today, our time together, I want us to get into an activity of actually taking the next 10 minutes to set your own goal. And a good way to know how can I create a goal is called a SMART goal. SMART goals are specific. You can measure them and they are attainable or realistic. You're not necessarily raising the bar too high and then becoming very disappointed when you cannot reach your goal. And of course, they are timely or they have a time limit to them. So let me give you some examples. An example for a nutrition goal, if this is something that you personally want to focus on, you can write down, I will eat 1 piece of fruit at breakfast 3 times this week. Or you can change it. Maybe that's something that you can do and you want to challenge yourself a little more. So try and develop a nutrition goal if this is something you want to do. Perhaps it will be, I will stop eating French fries, because we remember that eating them 3 times a week will lower your GPA. An example for a physical activity goal would be, I will take a 40-minute walk outside 4 times this week. So it's very specific. You can measure it. It's a time bound. I have to do it this week. And it's something that's rather attainable. Fitting a 40-minute walk is something I can do easily. Next, we have screen time. How can I write a SMART goal about screen time? Perhaps I will turn off the TV during dinner 5 days next week. Maybe this is a struggle for you with watching something while eating. So try to write a goal that will be achievable, that is realistic, and make it as soon as possible, right? And celebrate, reward yourself when you have achieved your goal. The last one I wrote is about sleep. I will read a book for 10 minutes before bed every night this week, then increase to 20 minutes next week. So, writing these goals will help you to progress. And I do encourage you to take some time to sit down and maybe even plan with a friend what are some of the SMART goals that you need to write for yourself. So maybe if you are not so shy, you can share in the chat um, and share with me what you want to focus on. Maybe you want to write a nutrition goal for yourself, or you want to write a screen time goal for yourself. You can share that in the chat, and we would definitely want to support you in reaching those goals you have. Before I end today, I did want to touch on another lifestyle factor: spirituality. So, this is a very recently studied lifestyle habit related to academic achievement. You have heard of IQ, the intelligence quotient, and you may have heard of EQ, right? The emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. And there's also something called spiritual intelligence. And there has been found a link between engaging in a spiritual life and motivation for academic achievement. So I would be remiss if I didn't share this benefit with you. We can't just focus on nutrition and physical activity and those physical health lifestyle habits without focusing on other aspects of our being, which would be social. Here we're engaging as a group, and our mental health, but our spiritual health is also an important aspect. And there have been studies that show a link between spiritual health and academic performance. So I hope this gives you an opportunity to think of ways to improve, and inviting your friends and classmates along with you, that you want them to improve as well, and you can join together and band together. So I want to thank you for joining today, for listening, and all the best in your studies.
All right. Thanks, Amara. That's really that was really fascinating. That was excellent. Um, so thank you so much. I think as I was listening to what you were sharing, um, some of these things we kind of like make guess that it would be good, but to actually look and see that there's some science behind it is pretty cool. So thank you so much. Hey, we have a few minutes for questions. So if you do you have a question, please put them in the chat box. We're also monitoring Facebook. So those on Facebook, if you want to share something, put them in the comments and we'll try to get to as many as possible. All right. So Amar, if you're okay, let's get through some questions here. And there's a lot of comments, more than usual for our webinar. So let me try to just scroll through them here.
I'm glad everyone was participating. I appreciate everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So I just want to say, if you do want to share if you go to Lifestyles Medicine Facebook page, the live stream is just there. So go there, you could share it with friends and family as a link. So we encourage you to do that, especially parents. I think this would be really excellent for parents. Okay, so maybe let's just start from the bottom up since it's easier for me. So Amara, there's a question from Crystal. Crystal, thank you for joining us. Are there any subjects that are directly impacted by sleep? Any studies on that?
I have not found any studies regarding sleep and specific subjects. It was just more of an overarching academic performance. But definitely, getting sleep helps your brain with memory, and getting that rest will help stay focused. So a lot of those subjects that may require a lot of like information retention would definitely be impacted by sleep.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Amara, I wonder. I was really intrigued by what you were sharing about the screen time. And when I see students these days, they're always on the computer and they always listen to music and then kind of flipping between their cell phone and their
Mm.
and so I just wonder like how that might impact the overall trajectory of education quality and learning outcomes.
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely. That's a big challenge, and that's a very present research pursuit because this has not happened in any generations prior, right? So this is a present day challenge. So continued research is definitely on the market. Sort of like, I guess, a recommendation for vaping, right? There are no long term studies on the impact of vaping, so the recommendation is just don't do it, right? So
mhm.
similarly, right, with this screen time and addiction to social media, really either don't do it or like be able to monitor it. And obviously having that support group and the accountability partner, lots of people do use time limits on their phone as well, which might be helpful. So of course there are very emerging studies and a very big need to study this because it is a present issue today.
Yeah, yeah. It seems to me that if you're not focusing on something, you're not really learning it deeply. Uh,
Yes.
although I've heard some people say the flip, like we live in a multitasking world, so people need to learn how to multitask too. So a little bit confusing, but in terms of deep learning, it seems to me it requires concentration.
Mhm. I think another thing that may help, I'm not sure if any of you have encountered this, but being able to kind of integrate all of your studies together. So recognizing that some elements of math can be also reproduced in English, or something you learned in science, you can also connect with another like history element. So being able not just to isolate each subject, but kind of understanding it all in a big picture is very helpful for young people and for students to make that understanding themselves instead of just listening to a teacher or professor and just digesting it like that, but being able to be the one to discover that and make those connections is of even greater importance for them in their studies, but also outside in their school, their home, their work life.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Amara, we have a question from GC. I think this is regarding your the study about sleep. How you said that early risers seem to have higher GPAs. How early did the students wake up? Do you recall from the
Oh,
study?
I don't recall that from this study, but I think being able just to have that recommended hours of, let's say, what was it, 8 to 10 hours, and
Mhm.
some students have class until 8 p.m. Some students have class until 10 p.m. So getting to bed on time and then waking up on time may be a struggle for them, but having that um, interval of uninterrupted sleep is more important than necessarily how early you can get up. Of course, the earlier the better because children have higher energy in the morning. So, waking up early, being able to successfully accomplish tasks and learn in the morning is really important since they have higher energy.
Mm, okay, excellent. And I think just a follow-up question here. Um, mentioned, I think you had mentioned that breakfast seemed to link with academic performance as well. Did they talk about the quality of the breakfast or just having breakfast? Um,
Um, the study really emphasized the fact that those who were more prone to eating a breakfast regularly also engaged in physical activity or had higher fruit and vegetable intake. So they they were not necessarily able to separate it, but they kind of had a combined effect. And you can see the same impact. People who are excited about outdoor activities are generally excited about, other types of exercise and healthy eating. So kind of, if you're passionate about one, you end up being passionate about all of them.
yeah.
Of course, that is to say the breakfast quality is important, and as I mentioned before, the sugar sugary cereal should be avoided because of that peak in energy that will quickly fall afterward.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I just came back to my memory. When I spoke about micronutrients and
Yes.
just nutrients in general, fruits and vegetables, and most of it was actually consumed during breakfast. So breakfast is a very important meal of the day because the study showed that most of the participants hit those levels of getting the folate, iron, omega 3s during their breakfast meal. So they were able to reach those recommendations even just through that one meal.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, breakfast is important. Okay, let me just skip from the tally. Are there any specific exercise or sports that we recommend for desk jobs and students, nine
Um,
to five, white collar workers, students? Um,
Of course, like stretching, getting up and moving, not staying in one position, that will help, especially with like, sore muscles and whatnot. But in regards to academic improvement, I didn't see any studies with specific exercises.
yeah. Okay. 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 So someone here is saying maybe standing desk.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Um, okay. From GC. So your thoughts on companies advertising sugary breakfast cereals to young people from a public health standpoint?
Obviously, there's a lot of money behind advertising, and it is very unfortunate when um, not just food advertising, but also toys and other types of activities or just TV in general shows sedentary. That's the best and most optimal when children view it. So I think there need to be more policies on what is acceptable advertising to young children. And it's really upsetting because sometimes parents don't have an opportunity other than to put their kid in front of the TV. So sometimes there is no other choice. I really think that yes, parents can make a decision to keep away those advertising, but ultimately, those big shots in the companies, they do have to be held liable and policies have to be made. Unfortunately, there's a lot of money behind it all, as you're aware.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, there's a follow-up question here. Would you support an advertising ban?
I would support an
Yeah.
advertising ban, absolutely, yes.
If I could just chip in here, several 5 years ago or so, I helped organizing an event about marketing to kids, um, and some it was interesting. Some people were saying that kids can't really discern since the rational part of the brain isn't developed. They can't really discern, you know, what they're really looking at, and they're very susceptible. So it's sort of like a manipulation, almost
Mhm.
unethical. That is one view. Um, Others say that what's it called? That it's kind of hard to implement such a ban. So if you how do you define unhealthy, for instance, is
Mhm.
another way debate. But yeah, okay, that's fascinating. So let's okay, we will just take one more question here. Maybe we just take the one that came here. Crystal says, can you comment about eye health and eye exercises on individuals doing online school? Um, any thoughts on that, Amara?
There are recommendations to like point your eyes somewhere else. So like setting a timer. I know there are different apps that do it where you can set a timer and then focus away or um, within your school breaks, your study breaks to do something active or to go into the kitchen or just like move around the house so that you're not engaged in a screen and especially to find other ways to take breaks. So, you know, having a hobby, painting or something else as opposed to picking up your phone on your break or turning on the TV during your break. So just trying to incorporate in those small like 5-minute breaks,
Mm-hmm.
other types of physical activity as opposed to another screen.
Mm-hmm. Yes, really good point. All right. Well, friends, we are at three. And so, as our usual practice, we like to respect your time. So, first, thank you so much for joining us. We really hope that you learned a lot. I certainly did. Amara, thank you for sharing this presentation with us. It was really excellent. Um, and we just want to invite you to our next session. It's next week, Sunday, with Dr. George Cho, and we'll be talking about how everyone's talking about vaccines and more lockdowns, but we feel that something is missing. That we're not talking enough about lifestyle medicine and healthy lifestyles for our fight against the pandemic. So, if that intrigues you, we want to invite you to join us next Sunday. It's for free. Sign up at lifestylemed.org/online. Also, in May, we're going to do a talk on how our thoughts impact our health with one of the leading lifestyle medicine researchers from the US. So, again, if you want to join us for that, we would love to see you there. Go to lifestylemed.org/online. So, again, thank you so much. Thank you, Amara, so much. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. And God bless. And we just remember your lifestyle is medicine.